So Shante, you're a big reader also?
I am. I love reading cookbooks. That's my favorite genre.
Oh, do you like cooking or do you just like reading cookbooks?
I have both. I love to just sit and read a cookbook, but I do like to then plan out what I'm going to cook out of that.
I do the same thing. I love to watch cooking shows, but I
Mm.
don't actually cook myself, you know? But I love to watch. I mean, I just love the whole preparation and how people put things together and then cooking, and then they come out with a final product and it looks so good. And I'll just watch one cooking show after another. I have no
Oh,
intention of ever making any of those things.
it's so soothing.
Yeah. Yeah. There is something very soothing about it. Maybe
Yes.
it's like when we were little and we watched our mothers do it or something.
Yeah. Um, for those of you joining us, if you have a favorite cookbook or cooking show that you like to watch, type it in the chat. We're going to get started in a few minutes. If you'd like to let us know where you're joining us from. Great British Bake Off. Yes. Oh my goodness.
That's a good one.
That's a really good one. Such a gentle, lovely show.
Yeah, where people are nice to each other.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Pineapple muffins. Oh, that sounds delicious.
Oh, that does sound good. Hi, everybody. Hi, Kathy. Oh, Kathy's on vacation in Tahoe. Sounds nice.
There must still be snow up there, right?
Okay, here we've got Barbara from Redwood City, Deborah from San Mateo. Oh, this is so fun. This used to be my neck of the woods. I lived in Palo Alto for, I think, 8 or 9 years. Yeah.
Neighbors.
Oh, San Carlos. Hi. Hi. Oh, Donna. Hi. Hi, Donna. Okay, Michelle
Santa
from
Cruz.
Santa Cruz. Yeah. And Ronnie from Half Moon Bay. Hi, Ronnie. Ronnie means queen. Isn't that a nice name to have?
Oh, and I see Pennsylvania. Thanks for staying up.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Okay, Concord, Pacifica. How lovely. Everybody is so nice to spend their Tuesday evening with us. You know, when the time changes, right now it's turning 7, but it's going to be 6. Yay! It's gonna be light all the time.
Oh yeah.
I love that when that happens. Kathy says there's just a little snow in Tahoe and it's melting. Nice.
So far, Pennsylvania is our farthest. Anyone else farther than Pennsylvania? I hosted a program. Someone joined us from London one time. I was so excited.
I've done these Zooms all over the world. And so I will often be in a book club where, you know, a lot of people have international book clubs because they've worked all over the world. And so we'll have people from the Mideast and from the UK and from Australia, all in the same book club. I think it's amazing that everybody can find one time when they can all be there.
Yeah.
Oh, Neha. Hi, Neha. We had dim sum. Let's see. She says, today's my mom, Usha's 65th birthday. Happy birthday, Usha.
Birthday.
How exciting. Let's see. Happy International Women's Day, everybody. I know the majority of us are going to be women, so happy birthday to us. Yes.
We still have people joining. We'll give it another minute, and if you want to type in the chat where you're joining us from, we'd love to read, I guess. Whoops.
Okay, Helen is from Foster City. So is Jacqueline. So is Louise. Are you guys all from the same book club? Maybe so. How fun. Oh, Burlingame Library. All right, great. Belmont. I've been to all those places. It's amazing. Okay, so let's see. Oh, Jenna. Okay, a lot are from your book club. How cool. Thank you. Menlo Park, Oakland. Ah, we got an Oakland person here, East Bay.
Great, wow. Bay Area. All right, well.
We have like 300 people signed up for this. I hope
so
everyone can join us.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to cut into your time, so I'll just go ahead and we'll do the intro and then I'll hand it over to you. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight at International Women's Day. Thanks for being here. My name is Shantae Santos, and I'm a senior librarian for learning experiences and outreach with San Mateo County Libraries. Tonight, Alka Joshi will be discussing her engrossing Henna Artist series consisting of the Henna Artist and the Secret Keeper of Jaipur before taking questions from the audience. Also join us later this month to meet Bryant Terry, author of Black Food, Stories, Art, and Recipes from Across the African Diaspora on Monday, March 14th at 6:30 p.m. Your microphone will be turned off, but during the Q&A portion, you'll be able to raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask a question. For those of you who'd like to access closed captions for this event, down below, you can click on CC and then show subtitles. San Mateo County Libraries welcomes Alka Joshi. Born in Rajasthan, India, Alka has lived in the US since she was 9. After writing commercials and marketing copy while running her own advertising and PR agency for 30 years, Alka enrolled in the MFA program in creative writing from California College of the Arts. Alka's debut novel, The Henna Artist, immediately became a New York Times bestseller, a Reese Witherspoon book club pick, and is in development as an episodic series by Netflix. Welcome, Alka.
Thank you so much, Shantae, and thanks everybody for being here, and thank you to the San Mateo County Libraries. So I wanted to become an artist. That's what I always wanted to do when I was a girl. I never thought I would become an author, much less a full-time author of a series. So what happened is that I wandered into advertising where I thought, oh, I can at least use my artistic skills as an art director. But I didn't get hired as an art director. They said, you know, you're a pretty good writer based on the portfolio that we're looking at, so we're going to hire you as a writer. So I became this writer of tiny, tiny little stories that took place within 30 seconds, within a minute. I was writing radio spots where I wrote a lot of dialogue between several people. And so what I didn't realize is that I was learning to tell these tiny, tiny stories. Well, my husband saw what I was doing and he said, I think you could be a fiction writer. You could write long form fiction if you wanted to, because you are always making up stories. And I just thought, no, I'm just an advertising hack. That's what I do. Well, fast forward to 2008. By then I was running my own agency, and 2008, there was this huge mortgage crisis, remember? And that led to a recession, another economic recession in America that was going to take about 2 years to recover. And so I thought, well, during these 2 years, while clients are telling me that they're going to hold back on a project or cancel projects altogether, I think what we'll do is maybe listen to my husband and maybe think about going into writing as a program. And there was a program not that far from our house. By then, we had moved from Palo Alto to San Francisco. We were living in San Francisco, and there was a program just about a mile from our house. And I thought, oh, I could just walk there. I can ride my bike there. So let me do this. In 2 years, I would learn how to write a novel. And it was called the MFA in Creative Writing from the California College of Arts. I thought, well, why not? And it was really fun. We read a lot, and I've always been a big reader, so I love to read all the books that we were reading. We learned how to develop characters. We learned how to write a novel. Now, at the same time, coincidentally, I was also visiting India a lot with my mother. My younger brother had bought a condo there for the family's use. And he said, anytime you guys want to go, there's a cook there, there's somebody to clean the house. You guys can go anytime and stay as long as you want. And my mother said to me, would you please escort me there? You can leave me there for a couple of months and then come back and finish up a semester, and then come back and get me at the end of your semester. So that's what she and I ended up doing about 4 or 5 times during my MFA program. And as I was with her all of those times in India, I was spending more time with my mother than I had since I was 18 and went away to college. So all of a sudden, I'm with my mother, and she is sharing parts of her early life with me that I had no knowledge of. She's telling me all about her early girlhood. She's telling me about the time she was 18 and in college in her first year, and her father said, "You need to come home now. We have found the perfect engineer for you to marry." And so my mother comes home and she gets married. My mother told me that her first 4 years were really difficult because she had 3 children in 4 years. Always somebody was in diapers, or, you know, 2 in diapers all the time. And she was always at somebody else's behest. Also, my father needed attention because he was a promising young engineer at a time when India was rebuilding itself post-independence in 1950s India. And so he was constantly being moved, getting promoted, or being moved from a project where he was building a road or a dam or some kind of a foundation. And we were moving from city to city. So by the time I was 9, we had moved to 5 different cities within India. Then my father announces that he wants to get his doctorate. And all of a sudden now we are going all the way across the world to Iowa State University. And so my mother has to move us all and get us acclimated to a whole new culture, whole new climate, everything. By the way, Rajasthan is a desert, as you can tell from reading my books. And so we went from the desert to the 30 below zero wind chill factor in Iowa, and it was a big climate shock as well. In any event, I realized as we were going through India with my mother that my mother has had such a different life than I have had. She has not had the opportunity to determine her destiny because her marriage partner was determined for her by her parents. Her, ability to have children or how many she wanted to have was taken away from her. She was just supposed to have children immediately, and she did. And she never went back to school, and she never had a career because this was something that, just wasn't done in her lifetime. So I realized then that my mother had taken a very different stance with me, her only daughter. I'm in the middle of 2 boys. And my mother said, "You are going to get to make all the decisions that I did not get to make." And it started really early, even while we were in India. When I was 4 years old and we were at the dinner table, my grandmother was feeding the boys more than she was feeding me. And my mother said, "What are you doing?" My grandmother said, "Oh, well, they're boys. They need more food." And my mother said, "Don't ever do that in my house again, ever." And it took a lot of chutzpah for a daughter-in-law to say that to her mother-in-law, especially in the 1950s. But I think my mother was always giving me the message that my life was going to be my own and I would never be shortchanged in favor of my brothers. So I went on to marry the person I wanted to marry. I went on to have the careers I wanted to have. This is my 4th career as an author. And I went on to decide whether or not I wanted children and how many I wanted to have. These are all my decisions. So I wanted to thank my mother for this incredible life that she has given me. And I thought, what better way to do that, now that I'm learning how to write a novel, than to create a character in Lakshmi, the henna artist, who is living the life that she is forging for herself. She is forging her own independence. She is creating the jobs for herself that she wants, and she is navigating the patriarchy on her own terms. And I said, "Mom, here you go. I'm writing this novel just for you." And my mom said, "Oh, well, that's really interesting. So Lakshmi looks just like me." And I'll show you a picture of my mother. This is my mother in 1955. And you can't tell from the picture because it's a black and white colored photograph, but my mother had green eyes. I have green or blue eyes, depending on what I'm wearing. And my younger brother has green eyes as well. So this is why Lakshmi and Radha and the baby Nikki all have these light colored eyes. So my mother said, "Well, okay, it's your book. You get to do whatever you want with it." And so I went on with the Henna Artist, and it became my thesis for my master's program. But immediately after my graduation from the program, my mother needed my help going to doctors. And within 8 months, she was gone. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wrote this novel for her. I wrote it in her honor. it doesn't make sense for me to keep doing it because she'll never see it be published, if it will ever be published. And so I think I'm just going to stop working on it. Maybe this writing business was just something I was doing for 2 years. I need to go back to work. And clients were calling me again. They wanted me to do their projects. And I thought, okay, that was just something I did for 2 years. Well, about a year and a half later, one of my thesis advisors called to check up on me. Where is that book? And I said, nowhere. And she said, look, I've got some ideas for you. And why don't you work on these ideas and, send me back another draft? I did. It took me about a year to do that. She sent off the draft to her agent. And next thing I knew, an agent is calling me from New York, Emma Sweeney. And she is saying, I love this narrative that's in front of me. I love this character of Lakshmi. I love the whole idea of Henna Artist. Let's work on this thing together. And I said, great. I said, we're going to get published. When? And she said, you're not going to get published anytime soon. You have so much work to do on this novel. And the work that you have to do on this novel is, and then for the next 3 years, she has me working on this novel, taking out 150 pages of the narrative that she had received, changing around some of the plot points, redoing the beginning, redoing the ending, and thinking about other characters that I might want to add. I just got so frustrated after 3 years. I said, Emma, at what point do we actually send this off to a publisher? I mean, this could go on ad infinitum. So she said, look, I have taken you as far as an agent can take you. I'm not an editor. What you need is a professional editor. Here's a whole list of editors. You need to start calling them and work on your book with them. And I thought, oh my gosh, I still have more editing to do after what seemed at this point was like 6 or 7 years. So finally, I start calling the first editor. She looks over my book. She hands me back 12 pages of comments. And then I think, oh, okay, this is wonderful. I go through all the comments and nowhere do I see that she is saying you are ready to be published. And that's what I wanted to hear. So I thought, I have hired the wrong editor. I need to hire another editor. So I go down the list. I get another editor. I call her, Ronit Wagman, and she goes through the entire novel. And then she sends me back not 12 pages, but 18 pages of changes that she is suggesting and things that she wants me to do differently in the book. And I just at that point lost it because I thought, look, I have already worked on this novel for so many years. I have been editing in addition to working full time. And I don't want to do this anymore. I think this must be a racket. And this is probably why nobody ever gets published because, they give authors hope and then they never actually publish their books. So I gave up again. I put the manuscript away in my desk. Another year and a half goes by. And at that time, I'm looking for something in my desk. I open the drawer. I run across this sheaf of pages. It's my manuscript. And I start leafing through it. And as I look through it, I think, why does nobody want to publish this book? I think it's a pretty good story. I like the character of Lakshmi. I want to know what's going to happen with Lakshmi and Malik and Radha. I'm curious, and it's the same experience that you guys might have had when you put in a garden or when you, knit a sweater a long time ago. And you look at it years later and you think, when did I have the energy and the talent and the wherewithal to put this together? That's kind of what I was feeling. And I thought, okay, why don't I look at the suggestions again from those two editors and see if there's anything I can do with them? So I looked through all of those pages and I realized that these editors were telling me, you are definitely going to get this book published, no doubt about it. But whether or not you are going to get a bestseller out of it, that is dependent on you and whether you address these points of finesse. So I started going through their points and I addressed about 85% of them. The other 15 I felt didn't apply really to my plot. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do another version. It took me another year. I sent it all back to Emma with a note. And I said, Emma, I have worked on this novel for almost 9 years now, and I really need you to send it off to a publisher, please. If you don't want to send it off, then at least let me know that I can get out of my contract with you. And Emma said, we don't even have a contract. So all those years that I've been working on this novel, I didn't even have to stay with Emma. I could have gone anywhere else, but I just didn't know. And this was a passion project for me. I wanted to finish this particular novel. It wasn't like I had a whole bunch of other novels that I wanted to complete. I really just wanted to finish this novel. So Emma said, well, hold on to your pants. It's fine. I will go ahead and send this off to a publisher. She did. And we, within 2 months, had a contract with Mira Books, which is a division of HarperCollins. And now I had a new editor, Kathy. Kathy was going to send me a whole bunch of changes that she wanted me to make to the narrative. And I thought, that's okay. Now I have a signed contract. And within 18 months, I'm going to see this book as a hardcover book. This is amazing. So I'm working on the changes. The art department is coming up with these beautiful covers, and they're sending me covers every now and then. And I'm looking at them and thinking, oh my God, okay. I like that one. I like that one. Oh my gosh, this one, when I saw it, I said, this is it. This is Lakshmi coming out of the palace. She is amazing. So this is the cover that we chose. The sales department flies me out to Toronto, which is the headquarters of HarperCollins in Canada. They fly me out to New York. They have me talk to the big booksellers. They have me do Instagram videos and Facebook videos. And, you know, they're doing all kinds, they're doing a champagne toast. They were amazing. And when they put me back on the plane, I said, oh my gosh, you guys, you're just treating your author so beautifully. I'm so impressed. And they said, Alka, this is not just any book. We are expecting this book to be a big bestseller for us in 2020. And that's when I knew that my agent had done the right thing by holding on to that book until she really felt it could become a bestseller. So I go back home, and then I start work on my second novel, because at that point, we had sent off the book to the printers, and it was going to be about 6 months before it became a book that was going to go to all the libraries and bookstores. So I start working on the second book because Malik from the first book will not leave me alone. Keep in mind that I've been working for 10 years on this novel at this point. And in 10 years, these characters have become like my second family. They are constantly with me when I'm showering, when I'm driving in my car, when I am, gardening, when I am cooking. They are constantly with me, and they are talking to me, or they are acting out scenes in my head. That's how I write. Scenes happen in my head. I work on them in my head as I walk, or as I bike, or as I do anything with movement. And then those scenes become more and more realized, more finessed, and then I finally will write it down on my computer. So that's kind of how the whole thing goes. So here I am talking to Malik and saying, no, I don't want to write this. And he's like, yes, you are going to write this, because you have 140 pages that didn't make it into the Henna Artist. And those are all about me. It's about my backstory. It's about my future story. It's about Radha's future story. Why are you leaving us out? So, okay, finally I start writing his novel, and it just, flows out so naturally. I finished 20 pages of it. I send it off to my agent because she asked for it. And then she said, I'm going to send it off to your editor. She sends it off to the editor. Next thing I know, we have a second book contract coming out from HarperCollins. And that book was bought before the first book was even out. So I say to my agent, don't they want to see if the first book is even going to sell before they buy the second book? And she said, Alka, look, they know what's going to sell. They know how it's going to sell. And if they want to buy the second book, let's let them buy the second book. So I said, okay, fine. So they buy the second book. Now we are all just waiting for my release date of the Henna Artist. And at that point, my release date was March the 10th, 2020. On March the 11th, 2020, everything came to a grinding halt, because that was the day that the World Health Organization said, we are in a major pandemic. It's global. You need to shelter in place. So one by one, every single launch event that I had planned for the Henna Artist is canceled. 150 people cannot come on Tuesday. They cannot come on Wednesday. The entire venue shuts down. Then the library shut down. Then the bookstore shut down. And eventually even Amazon, which I thought was going to be my last stronghold, even they stopped shipping out books, because they have to ship out everybody's toilet paper and paper towels and bar soap, because everybody needs essential supplies and they can't go to the stores to get them. So I am completely hosed. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I just spent 10, 12 years working on a novel that nobody is ever going to be able to read. And I thought, okay, what do I do now? Well, I think that we are all, as women, masters of pivoting. We have to figure out how to pivot. When one door closes, we have to find another door that opens. And I thought, okay, I'm going to reach out to my social media. And I knew that my social media were readers because those are the people who had started following me about a year prior to the release of the Henna Artist. And I'd been telling them all about this book. And I said, listen, if you got an early copy of the book, if you have a book club, if you want to talk about my book, if you got an ebook copy, if you got an audiobook copy, if you got a large print copy, whatever you got, would you please talk to me about this book? Here is my phone number. Here's my address. Here's my social security number. However you want to get a hold of me, please get a hold of me, because I am sitting here on lockdown too. And people started calling me. So at this point, the San Mateo County Libraries are my 705th opportunity to talk to people on Zoom in the last 2 years. And it's been a phenomenal way to talk to people. So all of a sudden now, I've got people I can talk to about the book. A couple of months later, my editor calls me and she goes, oh my God, Alka, you're not going to believe this, but Reese Witherspoon loves your book and she's going to talk about it and make it her book pick for May 2020. And I was completely floored at that point. I didn't even know how to react. I was completely quiet. And she said, are you still there? I said, yes. But did you just say Reese Witherspoon? She said, yes. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe this. Reese Witherspoon started her Hello Sunshine Book Club in 2017. In 2021, she sells it for $900 million. This woman is amazing. She gave female authors like me a platform to talk about our books without any competition from male authors. This is something that we really needed because nobody had done that for female authors before. Female authors always have to compete with male authors who get the majority of the promotional dollars, the publicity dollars, and any kind of recognition in the press. And Reese Witherspoon used her influence to say, I love these books by female authors. I'm going to put them front and center. And that's exactly what she did. So in my life, I will always owe a huge debt of gratitude to Reese Witherspoon, whom I just adore and admire. So I talked to Reese Witherspoon on May the 1st. I start crying because I can't believe it's happening. And then suddenly the movie companies start calling. They say, we've been holding on to this book, but we were waiting for a major personality to endorse it. And now that she has, we'd like to buy the option for it. So now I have a new agent in Hollywood. Her name is Ellen Goldsmith-Bain, and she runs something called the Gotham Group. And she said to me, Alka, do you want the Henna Artist to be a book or do you want it to be a TV series? I said, Ellen, I'm a binge whore. I love binging on streaming shows, on different platforms. And when I get involved with characters, I just want to follow them from episode to episode and season to season. So I would love for the Henna Artist in all its complexity, all the different layers that I put in here, I would love for it to be carried on season after season. She said, okay. So she went back to the producers and she said, anybody who was interested, she said, okay, the author would like to have a TV series. And those are the proposals they came back with. And I got to zoom in with all of them and interview them. And I chose the team of Michael Edelstein. Michael Edelstein is a major producer. He was also in charge of NBC Universal Studios in London, filling in all the content for NBC while he was out there, including the 7 seasons of Downton Abbey. And so when he read the Henna Artist, he told me that it felt as if he could do an Indian Downton Abbey as a result of this. And I thought, oh my gosh, that is music to my ears, because I only wanted to sell the option to somebody who had a vision of making it lush, making it elegant, making it really robust. And that's exactly the feeling that he had. He called up his friend Frida Pinto, and Frida said, oh my gosh, I love this novel. I love Lakshmi. I want to play Lakshmi, but not only that, I want to executive produce it too, because I have been looking for vehicles in which we can tell South Asian stories. So, okay, so now Michael has a third partner. He has a first look deal with Miramax TV, so he's got them on board. I sell the option to them. Next thing you know, they go out and they pitch all these streaming companies for the production dollars. They get 5 different offers for the Henna Artist, which was amazing. And they sell it to Netflix. So they're in the development process right now. And if everything goes well, maybe dependent on COVID in India, because we have to film this in India. You cannot reproduce Jaipur in San Mateo. You can't reproduce it in Toronto. You can't reproduce it anywhere else. So we have to go to India to produce this. And COVID is still a major issue there. So everything will kind of depend on that. So that's what's happening there. And then as soon as I finished the Secret Keeper of Jaipur, I started working on Radha's story, because I realized that I could not shoehorn Radha's story in the Secret Keeper of Jaipur, because Radha was supposed to be in Paris at this time. Remember, when I wrote the Henna Artist originally, in my original manuscript, I knew what was going to happen to Malik and to Radha. I knew where they were going. I knew whom they would be married to. I just knew all of that stuff already. So I thought, well, I can't shoehorn Radha into this, because she's not supposed to be in Jaipur. She's not supposed to even be in India. She's supposed to be in Paris. So then I start writing book number 3 about Radha. And that is the book I have just turned in to my editor, and it will be out in March of 2023. But what was so remarkable is that I didn't have time to write word 1 of book number 3, because I was so busy talking about the Henna Artist and talking about the Secret Keeper of Jaipur and doing all these interviews and podcasts and all this stuff. And so my editor called me and said, "Hey, I heard on a podcast that you're going to do a third book about these same characters." I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, why don't you send me something? Send me some pages." I said, "Well, I haven't actually written any, Kathy." And she said, "Why don't you send me just a couple of paragraphs of what you intend to do?" So I sent her a couple of paragraphs. I mean, I know Radha is in Paris. She is a perfumer. She is on the cusp of designing her first signature scent at the time that there is a knock on her door in the 6th arrondissement, which is where she and her husband and her 2 little girls live. And the baby whom she gave birth to in the Henna Artist suddenly shows up at her doorstep at the age of 18. So this is what's going on in book number 3. And I needed to go to Paris to complete it. And I couldn't go because of the travel ban. So, so I just sent Kathy like 3 paragraphs. Here's what the story is going to entail. And wouldn't you know it, HarperCollins sends us a 3rd book contract for 4 times the advance that they paid on the Henna Artist. So that was really remarkable. I have such a team there that believes in me, believes in the book, believes in these characters, and loves them as much as I do. So that's the story that I have so far. And I hope to keep on writing for the rest of my life. It's such a fun job. And I get to be in these different worlds, and I get to travel in order to do the research. And it's been tremendous. So I think I'm ready for questions, if anybody has questions at this time.
Yes, and Alka would love to hear your questions. So if you would like to raise your hand or use the raise hand function. Oh, I see. We got our first one. We will go ahead and unmute you. Oh, actually, yeah, here we go. Okay, so Alka, our first question is going to come from Peggy.
Okay. Hi, Peggy.
And let me unmute you. Sorry, Peggy. Oh, why can't I unmute you?
I love this. Meanwhile, Julie has written this, order a library copy of the Henna Artist and Secret Keeper of Jaipur. She's written a link in here. Hey, Peggy.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on your long-awaited success.
Thank you.
We are thrilled. We are thrilled. Can you tell me, what have you learned, aside from your formal education, in the process of editing and publishing? What did you learn that you did not learn in your formal education?
I think I learned 3 different things. The first is that writing is really about rewriting. You cannot just write one clean draft and expect to have it published. You are going to go through several different drafts. What you read right now of the Henna Artist is my 30th draft of that novel, because I was just learning to write. So just remember that writing is always about rewriting, and an author's first novel will often take them 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to do, because that's what they're learning to do. The second thing that I learned about is that I have to have empathy for every character. When you are the writer, you need to like all of your characters, or at least you need to have empathy for them. And that's what allows you to create three-dimensional characters, because I love to read about characters who have good, bad, and ugly in them. And that is exactly the kind of character that I write, because those people feel real to me. I don't think that any of us are perfect, and I like exploring the imperfection of characters. So I needed to have empathy for every character. I did not have empathy for Lakshmi's husband, her estranged husband, because he was a wife beater, and I was really upset with him. And my editor picked up on that, and she said, I need you to find some way to make him more three-dimensional, because right now he's only got bad in him. He has no good. There's no gray areas. So think about it. And I did, and it really helped make the book so much better when I could go back to page 1 and work on his character, and then also change the ending to something that I think was really phenomenal. And a third thing I learned is that I think that writing a book is not the end of the process. You write the book, and then you have to talk about the book. You have to make your reader understand why you wrote the book, what was important to you about the book, and you need to convey the passion that you had for the book. I think a lot of authors anyway, we spend so much time alone that we can get very introverted, and a lot of authors don't like to be in a position of talking about their books. I love being able to talk about the book, because I feel that in doing so, I bring my mother alive. I bring my entire family alive, because my family is so much all over these books. And my father and my brothers and my husband, they all read the books, and they all give me their comments, and I try to address all of those comments. So I think that it's a process. Writing the book is a process, but then also talking about the book can be a process. And I learned just as much from my readers, like you, Peggy, when you're telling me about, when you're asking me a question, or you're giving me an idea in the book, or you're telling me about one of the characters that resonated with you. I learned just as much from you as I do from any of my reviewers. So I appreciate that. And that's one of the reasons why I keep going also with the series, because people keep giving me ideas on what to do with the series. Thank you for your question.
Okay, and next we have, let's see, Deepa. I'm gonna ask you to unmute, and then go ahead and ask your question.
So it's very nice to see your presentation. One of the questions I had for you is, did you start doing your research before you started going on your trips to India? What inspired you there? And then how did you go about doing the actual task of researching? 3 questions, I guess.
Yeah. Well, number one, I can tell by your name that you probably are from a South Asian household. And so I think so much of the research for this book happened very organically, because I'm from a South Asian household. I've grown up eating Indian food. Hindi was my first language, and the kinds of home remedies that my mother practiced while we were growing up are the home remedies that I put in the book. So much of, I think, organically, what I understand about India is just from my first 9 years in India, and from the fact that I grew up in my household. The other part of what I did was, every time we went to India, I would interview shopkeepers. I would interview teachers. I would interview the people who were selling us saris, the people who were, taking care of us, driving us around, and, just anybody who lived in our apartment and, was a jeweler or doing different things. I just interviewed everybody just to say, what do you do? And how long have you been doing it? And what makes you do it that way? One of the things, one of the kind of people I met were women who had been part of the royal family or had been associated with the royal family. So they turned me on to a book called A Princess Remembers, which was written by, it's a memoir by the Maharani Gayatri Devi from Jaipur, who was a very well-liked and popular Maharani, married to the Maharaja of Jaipur. And that informed me a lot about palace life, and it informed me about things like Madho Singh, the talking parakeet, because talking parakeets were very popular in those palaces. They kept everybody entertained by imitating everyone's accents. I learned also about the fact that Maharajas would believe their astrologers. Some Maharajas did, other Maharajas didn't, but they would believe their astrologers when the astrologer said, hey, you know, your firstborn is going to try to dethrone you, so you need to get rid of them as soon as possible. And so the Maharaja would take their son out of the palace and would adopt a child from another warrior caste family and place them on the throne as the crown prince. So there are things that I learned from reading that book, reading a lot of other books that were either fiction or nonfiction about what life in India was like at that time, post-independence. And then, of course, the third thing I did was I watched a lot of movies. As you know, India produces about 2,000 to 2,500 movies a year. So that's a lot of movies, way more than Hollywood does. And there were lots of movies from the 50s and 60s that I could watch. One of the movies that was seminal to my writing of the Henna Artist and the time period that I placed it in, 1955, is that it was a movie called Mr. and Mrs. 55, and it starred Madhubala, who is an actress I mention often in the Henna Artist, declared one of the most beautiful women in the world by Life magazine. The story was all about a young couple who was engaged to be married, got married, weren't that happy with each other. And it was the year 1955 that it became legal for Hindus to get a divorce. That's what the whole movie was supposed to communicate. And it did. And I wanted Lakshmi to be in 1955 so she could finally get a divorce from the man that she never really wanted to be married to in the first place. So yeah, so a lot of different research points in creating the Henna Artist. In The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, I did so much research on the tribal people of the Himalayas. And Shimla is a place where my family used to go to escape the heat of Rajasthan. We would go there for the summer. So I know a lot about Shimla and the Himalayan mountains. We also lived in Chandigarh for a year. So these are all places that I know, and I did a bunch of research online and in National Geographic and various sources about the nomadic tribes who live up in the Himalayas. And it was really fun to find out about them, what they eat, and their herbal remedies, which are very different from what I grew up with. So yeah, so for every book, I do different things. And then, of course, finally, for book number 3, I was able to go to Paris, and I was able to talk to master perfumers and go to perfume factories and, you know, just talk to bottlers who, you know, design and make perfume bottles. And that was really seminal to my, my work on book number 3. Thanks for your question.
And then we've got Vaughn has their hand up. Vaughn, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
Vaughn, are you there? Do you want to unmute yourself?
Am I?
Okay, there we go. I was wondering if you ever went to the book festival in Jaipur. I read about it a few years ago and it sounded amazing.
You know, I am waiting for them to invite me. Thank you very much. You know, I think must be one of the few authors who's actually featuring Jaipur, both in my titles and in my books. And I am waiting for the Jaipur Literary Festival that takes place in January or February, somewhere in the winter time, every single year in Jaipur. So if anybody knows anybody from that festival, let them know. Alka's waiting for your call.
Nancy, you have your hand up. I'm going to ask you to unmute. We also have a few questions from the chat that we'll get to.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Nancy.
How are you? It's such a
Very
pleasure talking to you. I was blessed because of my job to work in India for 4 months. So I worked in Chennai and Bangalore in Hyderabad. So when I started reading your book, it brought a lot of beautiful memories about the people, the food, the colors. And I just, it was so pleasant to know that I was able to be there. Of course, the South is a little bit different from, where Jaipur is, but still, nevertheless, the colors and everything that you talk about, the sweets and how they prepare them and the aromas and the oils, it was just like a great memory for me. So that's just a comment. So thank you for putting so much detail on the book. It's just amazing. The question that I have for you is, what inspired you to have Malik in the novel?
So I think that one of the things I have found out as an immigrant to this country, Nancy, is that in 1967, when we first came here, there were so many misperceptions of India that kept getting replayed to me. One misperception was that all Indians were poor. Well, I come from the middle class, so I didn't understand when people started asking me about all of the poverty in India. I couldn't understand what they were talking about. Another misperception is that we are all illiterate. Well, I went to a little private school. I had a little blue uniform, and, my parents have always spoken English and read English. And so I didn't understand what that was about. And I think some of the other misperceptions, and, keep in mind, I was only 9 or 10 years old. I didn't know how to answer a lot of these questions that people were asking me. Why do you worship cows? Why do you let people starve? All of that kind of thing. And then another misperception that I found out as I got older is that people think that Hindus and Muslims cannot get along and that they're constantly fighting. Well, I just know from having lived in India and having been to India so many times that Hindus and Muslims oftentimes live in the same places. They have businesses together. They make movies together. In fact, our 4 highest grossing male actors are all Muslim in India. And so I think that, and everybody goes to see those movies. Nobody doesn't go to see those movies because they're a Muslim. And I think that one of the things I wanted to do in my movies is to dispel some of these misperceptions. So what I've tried to convey in these books is all of the beauty that you just talked about, the beauty, the color, the vibrancy, and also this kind of peaceful calm that I believe exists in India. Every time I go to India, I feel it. There is just a calmness in the people, no matter how much chaos is going on around them. They are, very peaceful. And I also wanted to dispel this whole idea that Hindus and Muslims can't get along. So that's why I had the symbiotic relationship between Malik, a Muslim, and Lakshmi, who is a Hindu. I wanted that to be a central idea in the novel. And it was very kind of disturbing to me one time when my agent said, well, if you're going to have Malik in this, why don't you ramp up the conflicts between the Hindus and Muslims? I said, because that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm really trying to say that there are many instances in which the two actually do get along. And I think that our media does a lot to harm that perception by only playing in the news whenever there are conflicts that arise. So it's just like when I lived in Paris one year in 2003, and everybody was asking me about the blacks and whites in America. They were saying blacks and whites never get along, do they? I said, well, no, that's not true. They said, but that's all we see on our television screen is when the riots are happening in LA, basically. So, I think that I have a responsibility as an author to convey some of the ideas that I feel are misrepresented currently in either the media or in other sources that are, out and about. So thank you for your question, Nancy. I also hear from a lot of South Asians all around the global diaspora and also from India constantly. These two books are huge bestsellers in India as well. And I think the third one will be also. But what Indians either in Jaipur, in Mumbai, in Hyderabad and Bangalore, wherever they happen to be, in Delhi, they are zooming in with me with their book clubs, and they're writing to me, and they're saying things like, I totally get this. I get these women. These are stories about women. These are stories about women's agency, and I get it. And I resonate with it, and I love all these characters, and I see my mother in them. I see my grandmother in them. I see my aunt in them. I see myself in them. And that to me is gold. Like, to me, when a reader says that to me, that it resonates with them, that's gold. I had a 90-year-old man from Slovenia write to me the other day, and he said, I don't know anything about India, but I just read your book, The Henna Artist, and I could relate to it because it was like my little town that I came from. And I just, those kinds of things are so precious to me. So thank you. Oh, Andrea. Hey, Andrea Buter, how are you? I didn't know you were here.
Hi, Alka. I remember our time in Paris fondly. I have a comment and a question. My comment is, I go to India a lot for my business, and I found it so stunning how much you were evoking my experience in India, the colors, the smells, the sounds, just everything. It was so Indian, and I had not realized how much time you had spent there. So now that makes total sense. My question is, since you live it with your characters, and I'm sure you still do, how is it now for you translating that, or having other people translate it into motion picture, the casting, the setting, the costume designs? Do you have input? How does it feel for you?
So my agreement is that I am labeled as an executive producer. So whenever the works are produced, whenever the episodes are produced, my name will show up as one of the executive producers. But that's just a highfalutin way of saying that I am somehow involved in the project, but I'm not really involved in the project. So as it turns out, an author has the ability to say, no, I want to write the screenplay for this. But when an author does that, they need to show some kind of pedigree. They need to show a skill in writing the screenplay. If you have no skill in writing the screenplay, if you've never done it before, as I had never done it before, then the producers have a much harder time selling that product to a streaming company. So I was advised by my agent, it would be better if and this is what most authors end up doing, they sign away their rights, and they bank a lot more money by signing away their rights, because as it turns out, the producers and the streaming companies and everybody would rather that the author is not there to say, no, you can't change that in the character. No, I don't want you to change that scene. No, they shouldn't be doing this, here and there. So it actually is better that I did, sign that away. So I'm expecting that the screen adaptation is not going to be exactly like the book. And that's okay with me, because I would be interested to know, how does somebody take all the interior dialogue and the interior thoughts of characters in a novel, and how they translate them into action and into a dialogue between different characters. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Andrea.
I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you. Great presentation, and you rock, as do your books.
Oh, thank you.
I see we do have a couple more hands up, but I do want to get to a couple of the chat questions. So I'll ask one of those, and then we can get back to the raised hands, and we'll kind of go back and forth. Where's the question I was going to ask? When you get a chance to read for pleasure, who are some of your favorite authors?
Oh, now this is a really difficult question for an author to answer, because I have a lot of books that I read during the year, about 40 or 50 of them. And by the time I'm done, I usually forget the name of the author and the name of the book, but I do end up liking a lot of them. What I will tell you, though, is that one of the books that made a huge impression on me as I was growing up as a little girl was Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. I love that book. I love the idea of this orphan girl who was supposed to be plain. Maybe that's where the plain Jane idea comes from. And didn't have a lot to recommend her. She had no money. She was basically thrown out by her stepmother. And, you know, she forges a life of her own because she believes in herself. She believes that she has the ability to determine her life. And I love that. I read that book over and over because I just thought it was so amazing. And I think that, you know, as an immigrant to this country and being in a classroom in Iowa of kids who were all white, and I was the only brown person there for years and years and years, I think I just wanted to feel that I also belonged, that I also mattered. And it was good for me to read the kinds of books that helped me feel that way, even though I was clearly so different. I looked so different from everybody else.
Thank you. Okay. Is it Danica? Danica? Thank you for waiting so patiently.
Thank you for calling on me. I appreciate it. I was going to unclick the hand thing because I wasn't sure, but thank you. Alka, what a fabulous talk. I'm from Bombay and I just came to this talk because you're from India and I can't wait to read. I'm from India too. I can't wait to read your books. So thank you. Great energy. I guess like one question I have is, I too got an MFA from NYU and I recently picked up my novel. So re-picked up my thesis. So I'm feeling very inspired. Thank you. Yes. I guess one question I have is kind of selfish. I was wondering if you'd be willing to share the developmental editors' names. That's one question.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to. And the second question I have is because I think your background in advertising gives you like this different view. And I'd love to know how you like specifically, was it like the publishers who gave you this whole path to marketing your book during COVID? Or did you come up with a lot of stuff yourself? I just want to get your take on this. If you expound on that.
You know, YouTube and Google are my friends. And so I am constantly, in fact, you know, Andrea Buter, who was just asking me that question, Andrea actually taught me how to search on Google very effectively for things that I need to search for. So one of the things that I did as I was writing is I went to YouTube and or as I was marketing, I went to YouTube and I went to Google and, you know, all kinds of different Instagram videos. And I wanted to learn, how does one develop a social media platform? Because I didn't know how to do it before. How does one talk about their books? How does one put on makeup for a presentation? Because I never used to wear a lot of makeup. So this was like a big deal for me to start wearing makeup for these presentations. So there's a lot that I learned just on my own. And no, the publisher does not help you with a lot of that. You know, publishing companies have really become smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Their staff has gotten smaller. That's why there's so many independent editors out there, because, you know, they were laid off their jobs and whatnot. But as publishing companies get smaller, they don't actually have time to help you with a lot of stuff. Now, I do have a publicity department at HarperCollins that does set up interviews for me. They did set up a whole bunch of radio interviews and then a couple of TV interviews for me. But it really was so much of my own doing and just saying to everybody I spoke to, hey, if you have another book club that you'd like me to talk to, if you have a library you'd like me to talk to, if you have a alumni association you'd like me to talk to, please let them know that I'm here and tell them that you enjoyed this talk. And I would be, you know, happy to follow up. So yeah, and Danica, what you should do is to get a hold of me, Alka at alkajoshi.com. It's just my name. And so when you do that, I can send you the names of the editors I have used. I'd love to do that. I like to give them as much business as possible. It's lovely.
I see one last hand raised, and then we can maybe get to a couple of more chat questions if we have a chance. So Lee, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hi, Lee.
Hi, Alka. Thank you so much. I really enjoy your book. And in fact, I already finished the second one because it's just so wonderful. I love the family lullaby, and I was wondering if that's a family lullaby from your childhood.
Yes, Lee, it is. It's something that my father used to sing to me. Rando Rani, Badi Sayani, Piti Tanda Tanda Pani, Lekin Kirti Hemamani. So that is something that my dad still, okay, I just turned 64 and my dad is now 90. And I swear to you, I just saw him like 2 weeks ago down in LA. And every time I see him, he's still, he will start reciting that lullaby to me. It's really lovely. And I think it's just something that I wanted to incorporate. That's a part of my life. That's something very meaningful to me. And I think that it's one of the ways that I always just kind of relate to my dad. So it's cool.
And is that a common tradition in among Indian families?
That they have lullabies? Or?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, what a sweet dad you have. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Oh, you're so welcome. My dad he reads all my books. In fact, he is one of my main info providers for what happened pre-independence, post-independence India. Because, dad was about 14 when Gandhi was doing all of his marches in India. And so dad would go to those marches. He would skip school to go to those marches. He remembers them. And then, of course, my parents were alive during independence. So they felt what the difference was pre-independence and post-independence. And then my dad was that engineer who was helping rebuild India. The British had done so much to destroy three major industries in India. One of them was the textile industry because they were building their own Victorian textile mills in England. And they didn't want the competition with the Indian textiles because India was known the world over for their beautiful silks and muslins that they created. And before the British came, 25% of the goods that India produced were sent abroad, were sold abroad in exchange for gold that came to India. And so they were sold abroad because everybody knew about those silk routes, the spice routes, that's where all the explorers were looking for. In fact, if you remember, the reason that Native Americans in America were called Indians was because Columbus thought he had discovered India when he first came here. So in any event, the textile industry was one of the things that they destroyed. The other thing the British destroyed was the steel making industry. In India, all of the warriors, and there were so many, there's a warrior caste, and they all carried these very fine, very sharp, very amazing swords. And the British didn't want that competition either. And so they destroyed that industry. They demolished it. The third industry that they demolished was the shipbuilding industry. In India, you have these woods that last forever, like teak, like rosewood. And these are very heavy hardwoods that withstand years and years and years of seawater. But the Northern European woods like ash or birch or whatever that they were making ships out of, those did not last forever. And their ships were constantly failing and leaking. And they didn't want competition from India for that either. So, or they wanted to take over that industry and not have the Indians do it. So consequently, millions and millions of Indians found themselves out of work. By the time the British left, they had robbed India of so much of her wealth, so much of her raw materials, and they had put so many of the Indians out of work that the export, which went from 25% to -4% in India, it really spoke to how impoverished India was when the British left. And I just think that, this is one of those stories that really needs to be told. I think that so often we hear about the British being benevolent overlords of India, which they considered their jewel in the crown. Well, yes, they considered it their jewel in the crown, but they also currently hold about $44 trillion worth of India's jewels in their coffers. And, personally, I just think that, the British, when they were in India for the 200 or plus years that they were there, they actually killed or maimed or imprisoned or destroyed the lives of tens of millions of Indians. So these are the kinds of history lessons that my father and various books that I have read have taught me, things that I did not know as a child, and things that I think many kids around the world in Western countries still don't know about the British.
Thank you. Do you have time for one more?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So somebody asks, what advice would you give to highly sensitive writers who struggle with negative feedback and criticism? Would being extremely sensitive be a deal breaker for becoming a successful writer, in your opinion?
No, I don't think so at all. I think that what you have to keep in mind is that when you get feedback, that's all it is. It's feedback. It is not telling you you're a lousy writer. It is not telling you that your subject matter sucks or any of those kinds of things. I think it's so important as a writer to say, you know what, I need to take this with a grain of salt. Some of this could be things that will help improve my writing, and some of this may not be things that will improve my writing. So I think that, you know, you just have to keep reminding yourself that feedback is not personal. It is about the work. It is about the work. It's not about you. It's about the work. And as long as you can keep separating that, that would be great. Now, of course, I struggle with this like everybody else, but I am lucky enough to have a husband who understands what it is to write. And he says to me, honey, you need to step away from the work right now. You're taking it too personally. Just step away from it for a couple of days, step away from it for a week or a month or whatever. And then it will, when you come back to it, you will have a whole new way of looking at it. And remember how I told you about how, you know, I was away from the criticism that I received from the two editors. I was away from that for about a year and a half. But when I went back to it, I could read a whole different way of looking at it. So you do need breaks every now and then, and you need to not write for a while or switch subjects in your writing and then go back to the other work after you've had some absence from it.
Oh, just real quick, I see Nancy, you have your hand up again. Nancy?
Unmute?
Oh, okay, there we go.
Okay, so Alka just mentioned her husband a few minutes ago, and I had the opportunity to attend a wedding in Chennai, and I was curious to know if she had a traditional wedding and if she is going to talk a little bit about it in one of her books, or she already does. I've only, you know, beginning to read the first one, so it's such a beautiful experience, and you know, it goes on for almost a week sometimes.
Yeah, I've been to several Indian weddings, but I myself had a very small wedding, and we had it, you know, my husband and I are kind of quirky. We're kind of unconventional. So we had it at my in-laws' backyard in Las Vegas, and they had a pool. So everybody jumped in the pool afterwards. Because it was a hot day. It was, I cannot believe that we got married in June, and it was so hot that day. I mean, literally there was sweat running down my legs while we were getting married. And I think we had about 40, 60 people or something like that. And it went on till all hours of the you know, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning before they all disappeared. So no, I had a very different kind of wedding. But thank you for your question.
I did see one more quick, I'm so sorry. There's one more quick question in the chat that I thought was really interesting. Do you have a favorite henna artist in the Bay Area?
There are so many great henna artists in the Bay Area because, first of all, a lot of South Asians have come to live in the Bay Area because of the high tech you know, work that's here. And by the way, you should know that a lot of those ITTs, which are Institutes of Technology, where Indians learned a lot of the software and hardware engineering that they are now put to use all around the world, those were started post-independence. And that was one of the things that India was rebuilding and figuring out, where should we go as a nation next? We think there's a future here in that kind of engineering. So that's what we're going to teach our people. Just allows me to say a little bit of that. But yeah, it's, I think I might have lost my train of thought. I forgot what the question was, but the henna artist. So I've met a lot of henna artists who are here. There is a wonderful, Spring Fling conference that happens every year, Spring Fling Henna Conference in the East Bay. And they invited me, even before the Henna Artist was published, they invited me to come talk to them. And that was lovely because I got to know all these amazing henna artists. There are about 23 to 26 countries around the world that are practicing the art of henna. And keep in mind that the henna plant grows only in dry, hot areas. They have to be kind of desert-like conditions, which is why Rajasthani henna is considered some of the finest henna powder that you can buy. And as the world expanded, there's henna in the northern part of Africa. Henna is applied in southern China. Henna is applied in the Mideast. There are all these different places, but now henna is being applied all over the world because people have moved across the global diaspora. So there are lots of fabulous henna artists. They usually practice within patterns. So it could be a Hindu pattern, it could be an Arabic pattern, it could be an African pattern, Chinese pattern. There's lots of different ways. And the henna artists of today are combining all these different patterns. Now, I confess to you that whatever Lakshmi is painting in the henna artist, those all came from my imagination. She is not just painting patterns. She is painting the kind of symbolic images that are going to be, she's painting these symbolic images that are going to help these women realize their desires. So when she paints on Parvati's feet in the very first scene in the henna artist, she paints a fig and a wasp. The reason for that is because I had read an article. I'm always reading. I read an article about figs and wasps and how there's like 50 different species of figs, and each one of them requires a very special wasp, a particular wasp, to fertilize it. When the wasp fertilizes that fig, it dies inside. And I thought there was something sexy about that. And that's just because that's how my mind works, right? So I'm thinking, hey, Samir, Parvati wants an afternoon in bed with her husband. So what if Samir goes to fertilize her? And then he's just like, oh my God, I'm so sated. This is amazing. So that's why I put the fig and the wasp on Parvati's feet. But that was just completely of my own doing. I don't think that there are henna artists who actually do that kind of symbolic henna painting, but I do. And I think that it would be wonderful if we had henna salons all over the country where they help women realize their desires and hopes, with essential oils and henna painting that was very suggestive, that was very symbolic. That's an idea for you entrepreneurs out there.
Well, thank you, Alka. This was so incredibly lovely. Thank you for spending the evening with us. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. And for those of you who'd like to purchase signed book plate copies of The Henna Artist and The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, the Library Foundation's link is in the chat. And please check out our upcoming author talks at smcl.org/events. And we would also appreciate it if you could tell us how we did with this program at smcl.org/rate this event. And I think that should probably show up in the chat as well. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for attending. So that was cool, Shanti.
That was so fun.
Yeah, I had a great time. You did a great job, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I know that you said this was your first time, but I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that's so sweet.
Yeah. So thank you so much for inviting me. I was just so touched by all of the different comments. They were lovely. And I hope that your giveaway goes super well.
Thank you.
All right. keep me apprised. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, we
All
will.
right. Bye. And thanks to Julie, and thank you to Jenna. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks. Have a good night. Bye.